The world watches the headlines, but the real war is fought in a spectrum that remains hidden. A silent, brutal conflict is being waged in the jagged shadows of the Zagros Mountains. This is not the conflict depicted in history books. The official reports released by the Pentagon are often carefully curated masterpieces of strategic omission designed to maintain a facade of stability. Beneath this surface lies a darker reality of clandestine incursions and ghost status operations. Most people believe they grasp the nature of modern warfare, but the truth regarding U.S. Special Forces operations deep inside the borders of Iran is significantly worse than you think. We are looking at a specific redacted operation, a mission conducted under a total communications blackout. A Tier 1 unit, the most lethal operators in the American arsenal, crossed the border with a single, harrowing mandate. From the moment their boots touched that hostile soil, they entered a state of deniability known as ghost status. This is a chilling pact between the operator and the state. If these men are captured, the United States will not acknowledge them. If they are killed, there will be no hero's homecoming. Instead, the government will scrub their records and disavow their existence, claiming they never served. They are the ultimate expendables, ghosts in a machine that refuses to admit they were ever built. It is a gamble where the only reward is a secret kept, and the price of failure is total erasure. Their objective was a facility that officially does not exist on any map. Hidden deep within the canyons of the Zagros, protected by solid rock and sophisticated electronic countermeasures, sat a black site that intelligence suggested was housing something far more dangerous than centrifuges. The air at these altitudes is thin and cold, but the psychological tension was even more suffocating. This mission was never meant to be a matter of public record. Every step through the treacherous terrain was a blatant violation of sovereignty, a spark that could ignite a global conflagration. The silence of the mountains was a physical weight, a shroud pressing down on men trained to be apex predators. They moved as shadows, their gear designed to swallow sound and heat, making them invisible to all but the most advanced sensors. But even elite units are subject to the cruel whims of entropy. What began as a routine reconnaissance mission was about to shift into a desperate scenario of high-stakes survival. The first red flag didn't arrive as a shout or a gunshot. It was a subtle, sickening flicker in the heads-up displays, a micro-glitch in the technology meant to ensure their invisibility. Suddenly, the encryption protocols masking their electronic signatures began to unravel. On a ridge that should have been desolate, a series of searchlights cut through the mountain haze, searching for targets that were supposed to be invisible. A sensor trip, perhaps triggered by a hardware malfunction or a hidden Iranian countermeasure, sent a silent alarm cascading through the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's command network. The silence of the mountains was shattered by the terrifying realization that the team was no longer the hunter. The infrared signatures of IRGC patrols, which had been wandering aimlessly, suddenly snapped into focus, converging with lethal precision on the unit's coordinates. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. The extraction window was beginning to shrink, and the mission's target was still miles away. The situation was rapidly spiraling out of control as the operators checked their weapons, their faces illuminated by the pale light of their tactical gear. Every operator knew the cost of failure was absolute silence. They were trapped in enemy territory, with no official support and a hostile force closing in. The true nightmare was beginning to unfold. The team had entered via high-altitude, low-opening jump, a descent from the edge of the stratosphere that felt more like falling through a void than a military maneuver. They utilized specialized pressurized suits and oxygen systems that allowed them to breathe at altitudes where the air was a frozen vacuum. Their parachutes were composed of radar-absorbent material, designed to drift silently past Iranian early warning systems like ghosts in the wind. On their backs, they carried cutting-edge electronic warfare suites, compact devices capable of bending local electromagnetic fields to create a dead zone around their signatures. This wasn't just stealth, it was science fiction applied to the art of killing. Yet, the sophisticated gear offered little comfort against the crushing weight of their reality. Each operator lived with the constant, gnawing awareness that they were nothing more than pawns in a geopolitical game. To the generals in the Pentagon, They were assets to be deployed, and if necessary, discarded. The psychological toll of ghost status is a unique form of isolation. It is the knowledge that your own nation has already signed your death warrant as a prerequisite for the mission. If a single mistake occurred, their families would receive no flag, no ceremony, and no closure. They were fighting for a country that had promised to forget them the moment their boots touched Persian soil. The mission's structural integrity began to fracture not from the environment, but from a betrayal across the ocean. A critical intelligence leak originating from an allied intelligence source, a partner agency whose loyalties were as fluid as the borders they monitored, had compromised the primary extraction point. The secure channel pulsed with a coded emergency signal. The extraction window was no longer safe. The allied source had traded their coordinates for regional leverage, turning a covert infiltration into a publicized execution. The realization hit with more force than an IED. Their escape route, the only tether back to the world of the living, was now a kill zone waiting to be sprung. In narrow mountain passes, the nature of the conflict shifted. This was the shadow conflict, an arena where winning is measured by the absence of evidence. To fire a weapon was a failure. To leave a casing was a catastrophe. Every engagement had to be handled with blades or subsonic, suppressed rounds that left no forensic trail. They moved through the crags, avoiding the IRGC patrols that were now swarming the area with terrifying efficiency. The Iranian response was far more sophisticated than the initial briefings had suggested. These weren't just border guards. They were specialized counterinsurgency units equipped with thermal drones and seismic sensors that mapped the vibrations of every footstep on the rocky terrain. The cat and mouse chase through hostile territory intensified as the sun began to dip behind the peaks. IRGC units seemed to anticipate their movements, cutting off evasion routes with surgical precision. If you're finding this look into the darker side of global operations gripping, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Support helps us reveal declassified secrets buried in the archives. As the team pushed toward the objective, a second, more devastating realization took shape. It wasn't just the allied source that had failed them. Encrypted data recovered from a localized Iranian server hinted at a high-level security breach within their chain of command. A traitor at the top had intentionally left them stranded, perhaps as a sacrificial lamb to satisfy a secret diplomatic backchannel. Despite the betrayal, the mission's objective loomed ahead, a monolithic structure carved directly into the mountain. Upon breaching the digital veil, the specialist turned pale. The facility housed no centrifuges. As they bypassed the final heavy-duty blast door, the sensors on their gear didn't detect radiation. Instead, they spiked with biological signatures that defied every single known international treaty. They had walked into a hidden factory for a weaponized pathogen. The horror of their discovery was eclipsed only by the sound of heavy armor and mechanized units closing in on the mountain. The sensors on their wrists pulsated with a rhythmic crimson glow, indicating that the airborne concentration of the pathogen inside the facility was reaching critical levels. Outside the heavy blast doors, the hum of Iranian Revolutionary Guard drones filled the thin mountain air, their propellers sounding like a swarm of angry hornets. The extraction window, once a narrow sliver of hope, was now slamming shut with the finality of a tomb. The U.S. Tier 1 unit did not have the luxury of fear. Every second spent inside this unmapped facility was a second closer to a global catastrophe or a localized execution. The IRGC was no longer just searching. They were saturating the area with tactical precision. Thermal flares cascaded down the mountain slopes, turning the midnight blue of the Zagros peaks into a flickering, hellish orange. The lead operator signaled for a tactical withdrawal, but the heavy thud of mechanized infantry vehicles approaching from the south told a different story. They were pinned between a biological nightmare and a conventional army. In the chaos, the psychological weight of their ghost status felt like a physical anchor. They weren't just fighting for their lives. They were fighting to prevent the discovery of a biological weapon that could redefine the term war crime on a global scale. Then came the moment every special operator dreads. A marksman from an IRGC perimeter unit found a gap in their formation. One of the team fell, his leg shattered by a high-velocity round. The no man left behind policy, the sacred code of the Brotherhood, clashed violently with the reality of their situation. To stay and fight a pitched battle would draw even more attention, potentially providing the irrefutable evidence of a U.S. incursion that would trigger World War III. Yet, to leave him was to abandon a brother to a regime that would extract every secret before his inevitable disappearance into a nameless grave. They chose a desperate, high-risk extraction maneuver, calling in a stealth-modified rotary craft that officially did not exist in the regional inventory. As they scrambled toward the secondary extraction point, the strategic implications of this secret failure became chillingly clear. These operations are pushing the United States and Iran closer to an open kinetic conflict than the public realizes. We are living in a new Cold War, where the traditional rules of engagement have been scrapped in favor of high-stakes gambling with human lives. This wasn't about regional influence anymore. It was about the terrifying reality that the Allied intelligence source had knowingly traded their lives for a minor diplomatic favor. Even worse was the silence from the American command center, confirming that the high-level betrayer was still in control of the narrative. Every covert incursion is a walk along a razor's edge. A single mistake, a single captured operator, or a single leaked video from this mission could ignite a global energy crisis or a nuclear exchange. The red line isn't just a political statement. It's a physical reality measured in heartbeats and suppressed gunfire. The world remains oblivious, distracted by the choreographed dances of diplomats and televised headlines, while the real history of our century is being written in blood on the freezing rocks of Iranian mountain passes. This brings us to the most haunting question of all. How many other Tier 1 units are currently inside Iranian borders at this very moment? How many ghosts are walking through the streets of Tehran or hiding in the shadows of secret bunkers, waiting for a signal that may never come? The war hasn't started yet because the men fighting it are still in the shadows, operating in a world where their country will disavow their existence, and their deaths will be marked by nothing more than a redacted line in a hidden ledger. For now, the silence holds, but the shadows are growing longer, and the cost of maintaining the secret is rising every hour. Comment below with your theories on what else might be hidden in those mountains. Watch the recommended video for more classified history.